Hello, I'm Glenn W. Worthington, and I am literally the guy who wrote the book on diamonds in Arkansas. Today I brought you to a very historic spot. This is where a diamond recovery plant sat. It was built and began production in July of 1913, and it operated for 5.5 years until January 13th, 1919, this plant was destroyed by fire. We're going to look at some photos that I have in my book and some photos that aren't in my book. You'll get a little extra here. And we're going to talk about the history at the spot where it took place. Now you can see in the background, this is the Mooney house. It was a two-story home belonged by M.M. Mooney, and his great uncles built it in 1830, before Arkansas was even a state. Now, yesterday I uploaded a video about the Mooney house. We went up close and personal. We went inside that very old building, 190-year-old two-story house that used to have a third tier on it to watch for hostile Indians, because when that house was built, and it's still standing today, the oldest structure in Pike County, Arkansas, when it was built, this wasn't even the state of Arkansas. This was Indian territory at that time. So a lot of history here. It fascinates me. I also did a video that showed how the ore was dug up a mile from here. Crater of Diamonds is that way through the woods on the other side of Prairie Creek. Prairie Creek is right there. The ore was dug by hand, loaded into ore carts, and hauled on a little tram train, a small gauge railroad. Specifically, it started there, it ended here at the diamond recovery plant, and we're standing right where those ruins were. So let's kind of go through the history. I'll show you some photos, talk to you about what's going on in the pictures, so let's get started. This is fascinating to me, and I just kind of wanted to share it with you. So first off, while you're looking at the Mooney house, I want to show you, here is the Mooney house in this old photo. So you can move it out of the way, and then here, about, I'd say 1912, they had a steam engine drilling a water well so they would have water for the diamond recovery plant, because water is an essential ingredient in recovering diamonds. Now, the Mooney house that you're looking at is historic. If you didn't watch that video, people used to pay a fee and go out and search. And so there's the Mooney house back in the trees, and women in their long dresses back in 1810 used to walk across the bridge and walk a mile in those long dresses all the way to the diamond field to search for diamonds. And here's an old picture of the Mooney house. You can see in the background, and people were crossing Prairie Creek in a horse and carriage that had a umbrella on the top. So this plant, I told you, was under construction, and construction, this photo was probably taken in 1912. So you can see the skeleton of the plant, and just by looking at it you can tell, wow, this must have been a massive structure and a great undertaking to build, you know, a project like that here in rural Arkansas. But the plant made progress, and soon it began to take shape, not just a skeleton, but you had actual planks on the outside, and you could see what you had there. So pretty amazing structure, and they've got scaffolding all around it so the workmen could put the siding on it and build this plant. So amazing pictures. And here from a little farther back you can see the building, and they had some other outbuildings around it, and then they had train track leading up to it, and that's how they got the ore to the plant. And then here are a couple of more photos. You can see piles of lamprite, or kimberlite they called it at the time, outside. And you can see the water tower, and that's right where that steam engine was drilling the water well. And then here's another view. This was while it was still under construction. And you can also see a train trestle, if you look real close, that crossed Prairie Creek and the track leading up to this plant that was under construction at the time. And then here's some more piles of kimberlite, the diamond bearing ore outside the diamond recovery plant. Here's the plant that used to sit right here at this site. I mean, that's what is so awesome and impressive to me. Is like we're at that historic spot where this state-of-the-art diamond recovery plant was built in 1913. And I told you the diamond ore was hauled to the plant on this train track, and there it is entering the lower level on that track. And I don't know, pretty impressive building, and a good way to bring the ore to the processing plant. And this is the train and the employees that brought it there. I told you it was a small gauge tram, and the men are almost as tall as the little locomotive that hauled the ore to the plant from the diamond field. And this is when you get into the bottom of the structure, and that's right here where we're standing. If you look at this ground, this is what it used to look like 110 years ago, or over 100 years ago anyway. And we have another view, very similar. The same woman standing down there. I'm sure the photo was taken the same day. The ore carts, and just looking at the structure of the building. Wow, what architecture, and the massive beams, and to build that big thing back, you know, almost 110 years ago. Pretty cool. So what powered the diamond recovery plant? A steam engine that provided the locomotion. So they probably burned wood or coal in this steam engine, and the steam pressure moved the turbines, moved these big wheels, and the wheels gave the motive power to operate such equipment like this African style rotary wash pan. There's one out in front of the Crater of Diamonds Visitor Center, and this could be the very one. This is before it went into operation. You can see the gears here, but you can see the drive chain, so everything wasn't hooked up quite yet. They were still assembling it, and this picture was taken. That's the heart of the diamond recovery plant. And here is another photo of the African style rotary wash pan, and it was probably purchased in South Africa and shipped here to little old remote Murfreesboro, Arkansas, and put into operation, because that's what you needed to recover diamonds at the time. And after the wash pan got rid of the light material and concentrated the heavies, then it was run across this grease table, and here's a man cleaning the grease off that would catch the diamonds. And I'll explain that whole process in an upcoming video of how grease catches diamonds. Like I said, the unfortunate news is this plant was intentionally burned to the ground January 13th, 1919. You can see the African style rotary wash pan sitting here in the ruins, and then this is just the burnt timbers. What a shame. Burned to the ground. Here's the Mooney house in the background, so that gives you perspective. See, I can pull it away and you can see the Mooney house is right there, and then here's the ruins that sat right in front of us here. Here again, a little different view of the same tragic scene. January 13th, 1919, African style rotary wash pan and the roof of the Mooney house there in the background. And you can see some of the other machinery and gear and equipment. This is part of the water tower here off to the side of the photo. And then another photo very similar, taken at the same time. And here's the water tower and the ruins after the fire that shut them down. They were never able to rebuild. But what did they find in the 5.5 years? Well, here are some piles of diamonds. They set them right so the light of the window sunlight would shine on them, and in the background you see a scale. And what's interesting about that scale is a balancing scale. You put the diamonds in one pan and little weights in the other pan. You pick the weights up with these tweezers so that you didn't get any finger grease or anything on them that would change the weight, because it's very, very specific and fragile and calibrated. But that very same scale is in the museum at the Crater of Diamonds Visitor Information Center. And when I first found my 10 diamonds at the crater in the summer of 1978, they weighed my diamonds on that same scale. So I know that makes me sound like an antique, but I guess maybe I am. But so here's some of the men that worked at the diamond recovery plant, and it has their names down below, but I won't read them because you don't know any of them. But black men and white men worked side by side in this diamond recovery effort, and they were all out of a job when somebody burned down the plant. So what did they find in 5.5 years? Well, here's some of the diamonds. And I'd like to, while you look at the at the field for just a moment, I'd like to read a sentence out of the book that talks about the diamonds that were found. Again, this is my book, Genuine Diamonds Found in Arkansas by Glenn W. Worthington. White, yellow, and brown diamonds were found at the plant then and now. And here's that picture I was just showing you. During their 5.5 years of operation, we can estimate that this diamond recovery plant found a total of 4,939 diamonds weighing 1,100 carats. This was World War I era production. Due to war-related demand, the value of rough diamonds had increased 100% during this period. So they had a great run, even though it ended tragically. Now, diamonds are needed in the war effort. The industrial diamonds were used in machinery, and they are naturally tough, and they don't wear down and can be used in abrasives, in doing tooling and machinery, in making war equipment. And so there was a great demand for diamonds, and the Germans, who we fought against in World War I, they had a lot of South African diamonds tied up during the war. And so we had no access there. So a USA diamond mine was a marvelous asset for our World War I war effort. And so it's great that they were able to mine 1,100 carats here. Some were cut into jewelry because, well, we'll look at some papers here in a minute, and it showed that, you know, they were faceted into diamonds for people to wear in jewelry. But anyway, this is a very great historic thing that we had our own USA diamond mine during World War I. The war was like 1914 to 1918, and the armistice that made an official end to World War I. It was signed November 11th, 1918. 2 months later, January 13th, 1919, these plants were intentionally burnt to the ground. Now, who did it? Why did they do it? Did it have anything to do with the Germans in World War I? Nobody knows for sure, and some speculated De Beers was involved. But I have a different possibility I propose in my book. But you'll get a copy of my book, Genuine Diamonds Found in Arkansas. Read the fascinating history and decide for yourself who you think might have burnt this plant to the ground and why. But before I let you go, let's look at some more of the diamonds that were found here. We looked at the plant and it was burned down, but this is a fascinating old picture. Piles of diamonds. These are probably brown. These are probably white or clear. These are the bigger diamonds. I mean, these are really, really good size. And in my book, I tell Howard Millar, he and his father had the diamond recovery plant. He tells about some of the diamonds that they found. But while researching for my book, genuine diamonds in Arkansas, I went to the Crater of Diamonds archives, and they had a box full of old diamond papers. And the way they used to put diamonds, they would fold these special papers, and the diamonds would be in them. Now, I checked through all of them at the museum, and they were all empty, but they had this writing on it. And I'm so glad they preserved these, because now we'll know that, well, they had 23 yellow diamonds totaling 12.73 carats, and here's 14 white that weighed 10.5 carats. Here's some cut diamonds, 6 white ones, total cut weight 2 3/4 carat, and 1 brown that was a little over a ½ carat cut. So they probably started out twice as big. Here's 6 white diamonds, and together they total almost 5 carats. Here's 9 bort, 5.5 carat, and that's kind of like a worthless diamond. Industrial, so they used it for the diamond war effort. Here's 7 yellows and 20 whites, and I love the penmanship. This is really neat. But 6 yellow canary diamonds, they've not been cleaned, a little over a carat's worth. And here's from the Kimberlite Diamond Mining and Manufacturing Company, cut by Van Dam in New York. So one was a 1.02 carat brilliant cut, and a pear-shaped cut, and a mahogany diamond that was a ½ carat, in other words, black. 32 assorted diamonds, 65 whites. Back then they found white, yellow, and brown diamonds just like they do at the Crater. Here's 23 yellows that weighed 12.73 carats. And here's some others. These are like grains of sand, small diamonds, and that's used for industrial use. 18 dark brown, 10 yellows, 25 whites. And I love the way they wrote Mooney Mine. It's so cool. 15 yellow. And you think, like, what pen did they use at the time? Ozark Diamond Mine, Ozark Mine Diamonds. The Ozark Mine, Horace Bemis had started it, and it was over on the north end of the field that the Mooneys owned, and this is up by the current day mineshaft building. So Horace Bemis was a wealthy lumberman from nearby Prescott, Arkansas, and he made a deal with the Mooneys to find diamonds there, and he had a plant built right on the edge of the property. And they worked, and they had some problems. They were trying to find diamonds with a log washer, so they didn't have the right equipment, but they did have a nice building over there. Well, while they were still trying to figure out just how to find diamonds and everything, Horace Bemis died of a heart attack. So along came Howard Millar, a geologist, and his father, Austin Q. Millar. They had been mining at the Kimberlite mine about 5 miles from here up in the woods. The problem with that is it was very remote. It was hard to get to. The road wasn't good. And once you got there, there was no water. You have to have water to find diamonds. It's an essential element in diamond mining, is to have water to wash with. So they gave up on the Kimberlite mine effort when Horace Bemis died. And this was Horace Bemis's company, the Ozark Diamond Mine Corporation. And he sold stock in it. And this is an old stock certificate from back in the day. And then this stock transferred over to the Kimberlite Diamond Mining and Washing Company that started out at the Kimberlite mine. So there were 3 different company names involved: the Kimberlite, the Ozark, and the Mooney Mine. And they all 3 were under this one roof of this building that burnt here. So when the building was burned down, they not only burnt this building, but at the other end of the mile-long train tracks, they burned the other building. So it was obviously arson. And they also burned the train track between it and the trestle going over Prairie Creek that brought the ore to the plant. So they burned everything, and there was no rebuilding. It was just a total loss. So very unfortunate, and whoever invested all this money back then, they lost everything. But for a while, before it was burnt down, a lot of diamonds were found, and it's just a pretty cool historic spot. And you might wonder what happened to all the debris. Well, Al Terrell, who owns this land, told me that for decades it was bulldozed up and was here in a pile. All that old debris, the old mining equipment, the old tailings, because in those old pictures I showed you, there were piles of kimberlite tailings that they had already looked through, and just all over this field. Well, it had all been bulldozed up into a pile, and then when the state of Arkansas wanted to build, this is Highway 301 here that leads from Murfreesboro 2.5 miles to the Crater of Diamonds State Park. This Highway 301, state highway, they wanted to build a bridge over Prairie Creek. The other bridge had been much lower, and every now and then when you'd get a really bad rain, that bridge would wash out. So they wanted to build it up. So they bought this pile of debris and built up the bridge abutment going over Prairie Creek. They thought, well, that's handy. Who owns that pile? They just bought it from the Terrells, and they piled it over there. So they ramped it up and built that higher bridge over Prairie Creek. So that's where the debris is, but don't go digging under the bridge looking for anything. You're going to do a whole lot better at the Crater of Diamonds State Park. And that's all encased in concrete, and I'm sure you'd get in big trouble if you went diamond hunting under that bridge anyway. So the thing to do is look at the Crater of Diamonds State Park, but there's amazing history tied to it that goes back to, 1906 when the first diamonds were found, and 1910 when they started diamond searching on the Mooney property at the north end, and then 1913 to 1919 when this diamond recovery plant was in operation. Some amazing history. And last year, over 100,000 people, I think 139,000 people, drove down Highway 301 on the way to the Crater of Diamonds and had no idea what history they were passing by. But now you know what went on here, and you can have an appreciation for the work that was done, the building that was built, the tragic loss when everything was burned down, and the diamonds that were recovered. So thanks for joining me, and I'll have more interesting videos coming up soon. Please subscribe, like our videos, and watch them. The history overlaps from one video to another. So thank you for joining me, and check back again.